belt in, because that is now $42,000. Let's kick things off with the biggest reason why these are so beautifully balanced. Put another way, wonderful to drive. The weight, 3,183 pounds, or depending on how you express your weights and measures, 1,444 kilograms. Love my job, but some days are indeed better than others. With that, let's go full fat, go into sport, shall we? A little bit of delay there, but 5,500 RPM, and it becomes a GTI. So I think we need to get into the bad news right away. What you're looking at is the only way you can get it. You can't get a manual anymore. Probably heard this news, but I'm here to tell you that you could blame it on fuel economy, or those dastardly, evil bean counters in Wolfsburg. But in reality, it is your fault. You did not buy enough of the manuals. Instead, I've heard it before. Well, you know, the DSG does shift faster, and I do want to drive faster. That only works if you are drawing a paycheck as an F1 pilot. Other than that, cars like these need to be manual. We can piss them on, we don't get it. We don't get it because we didn't buy enough. They keep them around when we write checks. Hence, Porsche, even Toyota has manual transmissions because we buy enough. So there you go. Let's press on from the bad news. The good news, this is still, God, what a beautifully balanced, put another way, super fun car to drive. Remember, this is what invented the hot hatch. This is what put a smile on people's faces in the Melees era. And here, 50 years later, it's still a thing. Now, nothing's really changed about this engine here, even though they're calling us, a Mark 8.5 or something like that. So really, all of the goodness that we've experienced the past couple of years, all there. It's just the bad news of you didn't do the right thing, you didn't buy the right car. Okay, so that's all fine and good, but what else has changed to create the now Mark 8.5 GTI? Light signatures. Have we discussed that before? Because apparently it's all the rage nowadays, and the Volkswagen designers and engineers wanted to jump on the bandwagon apparently, so they made some changes to the front of the vehicle to accommodate a different light signature. This is one of those things, beauty is in the eye of the beholder, especially if you want some extra bling. Then there's that whole good, better, best strategy. That's nothing new. There's the S, the SE, and this, the Autobahn. This is the fanciest of the GTI world. I did some digging on that, and I wonder how many of them are sold. Apparently, it's the middle-of-the-road model that is like 53% of sales. Second best is the cheap seats, that's 30%. This only accounts for 17%. And that's good and bad news, because obviously this, the most expensive, we'll get to that later. However, it changes the wheels as well. The wheels now revert to an older, like phone dial style, which I thought was magnificent in older generations of GTIs. The reason why is I thought it kind of picked up on the early 928s, but that's my Porsche nerd falling out of my pocket. And then most importantly, the fanciest one still continues with the adjustable suspension or adaptive suspension, DCC, whatever you want to call it. We'll have to discuss that point a bit later, but that's really the biggest difference in my eyes, aside from fanciness, between this and the cheap seats. Now, believe it or not, there is still yet another big change to report. Remember that electronic limited slip differential? Yes, in a front-wheel drive car. That is now fitted as standard to all flavors of GTI, even the cheap seats. That's really the trick about these things, the absolute German refinement. You buy these things by the ounce, not by the pound. Now, yes, I'm going to spend a lot of time talking about the GR Corolla throughout this episode. Those, they more hit you over the head with a hammer when you drive those things. They're more unrefined, not quite to the level of the Elantra, and that is perfectly imperfect, and I love it. This is to the opposite end of the spectrum, and that is a huge function of that electronic limited slip differential. I don't feel a crazy amount of torque steer as I'm going around corners. I don't feel like I'm getting beat up with effectively a baby buggy on four wheels. Then there's that transmission. I want to go back to this whole DSG thing. Is it a terrible thing that it's the only transmission? I would say yes, because we're missing something here, but Volkswagen, Porsche, they've kind of got to the highest level. God, this is such a fun car. The highest level of refinement with these types of transmissions. Yes, the Toyota, they finally have done an automatic, an 8-speed automatic in their car, but is it agricultural compared to this? In comparison, yes, it is agricultural. Is it that bad? No, it's just not. These guys have been doing it for so many years, and they've got it down to an absolute perfection of science, where Toyota's just started to do that with that type of car, and this nod to the GTI. A bit of an admission on my part. My friends, they refer to me as a dyed-in-the-wool cheapskate. I prefer efficiency expert, which is why I'm excited to share that one can still have a GTI for $32,445. Now, a bit of an aside, that translates to about $10,1984, which represents a little over a 30% inflation from the original US car, but I digress. $32,445 also represents kind of the same money for a nicer Miata GR86, also balanced cars, maybe not quite the same practicality as this. Then we get into the good, better, best we talked about earlier. The basic one, the $32,445, that car has what I think is the better interior, but it doesn't have the adjustable suspension. Then we get to this one here. This one is $40,800 base price. It has one option, Monster Mats, $190. Then there is the destination and handling von Wolfsburg, Deutschland, $1,225, which brings this to $42,295. Now, a huge point here, this one, stunning color, this slate blue. You don't have to pay extra for it, and it makes the car look more mature. Now, also part of this whole Autobahn package, it's not just the wheels and the adjustable suspension. This one has heated, cooled seats that are leather. This one, the Titan black interior, I'm not that excited about it. I would prefer an option here to have the Verbery in the fancy car, if that's an option. But really it represents a much bigger problem for today's GTI. You see this one, the fancy one, I don't see it competing with things like a GR86 or a Miata. You see the GTI, it's up against a completely different competitive set in 2025. Okay, I know what you're thinking. It competes with a Golf R. Follow my logic here for a minute. The basic price of the core entry-level cheap seats GR Corolla is around 40 grand. Yes, they went up about $2,300, $2,400 in base price over the past 2 years since they came out. Then there's the middle model in the good, better, best. That's about $42,500. Then there's, of course, the best one, the Premium Plus, no longer called the Morizo. That was a limited run. That's about $46,500. Then you can now add an automatic transmission to these. That's another $2,000. So you can see my logic here for an automatic basic GR Corolla. Yeah, a very different animal, not balanced at all, but magnificent. Same price as the car we're driving today. That's what makes the competition so difficult in 2025 for GTIs. Now yes, technically the base price of the GTI is somewhat less than this, but that base price, interestingly, has not gone up since this car came out, yet this has gone up 7%. But really what you and I are focused on is return on our investment, resale value. They're very surprising results, because these, when they first came out, Bring a Trailer was on fire. They went over sticker. Morizos famously 80, 90, 100 grand. Now even the Morizos, they are just used cars, and they have come back down to earth to the point where, take one of these, a 2023, first year of production, the basic one, $31,500. Granted, super low mileage, really nice cars on Bring a Trailer do bring more, but not over sticker. Compared to a GTI, same vintage, 30,000 miles, 2 years old here in California, that's about 28.5. Put another way, they both returned 71% on your initial investment. But then there's the price of reality. Put another way, reliability. And this is an unusual case from our Living With series, where other cars I just kind of see what's going on and I report it to you. This I actively looked for problems. It's a Toyota, it's supposed to be reliable, but here they made something so magnificent, a Toyota that I actually want. There had to be something that went wrong. It was too good to be true. Yet I have a ton of friends that own these things. As a matter of fact, this is a pilot buddy of mine from over at Torrance Airport. It's his personal car. And no matter who I spoke to and looked online, I just can't find anything wrong with these things. And now back to the world of the Volkswagen, and one would think this would be a nightmare of reliability. And there, you would be wrong. Believe it or not, the engine, all that kind of stuff, generally reliable. Now granted, if you tune a car to within an inch of its life, it will blow up on you and that will be your fault. But the Mark 8s, they have been generally good. Now they haven't been without their problems. They had some early recalls, I believe 2 of them. One of them was the radiator. And then there's that infotainment system and some of the software glitches. Those are ongoing, like to the point where this car, under 1,000 miles, I'm having problems with the infotainment system, processor speed, that kind of stuff. We'll talk more about that later. But overall, comparing the two, Toyota versus a Volkswagen, one wouldn't believe it, but this, almost as reliable. Now, a few pesky notes. Number one, I just got out of the same vintage of Golf R in Michigan, and that has significantly better shifter paddles. I think we need that here in the GTI. And then number two, this is the most fancy GTI on the planet. This is the Autobahn, which means you get bigger wheels. Is that a bad thing? No, I don't think it really impacts the ride quality. Granted, the Golf R and the GTI in the Autobahn package have the same size wheels. My guess, the GTI that I would buy, I'd probably want the 18s for no other reason than I would take it to autocross and I want a little bit more sidewall. But in terms of ride quality, I don't think your significant other, girlfriend, mother, whatever, are really going to argue with you about the ride quality of a GTI. It is just amazing to me that this is within striking distance of the weight of my car, and that, let's just say, a different side of the spectrum. Yet they're both exactly the same amount of fun, but in a different way, and for a fraction of the money. That's what's so amazing about GTIs. You can compare them in terms of fun or value of fun to anything on the planet, and they would often meet or exceed the fun quotient, no matter the vehicle. Okay, so let's you and I downshift into comfort. There we go. And have a difficult conversation. I think it's pretty clear that I am a huge fan of GTIs and Golf Rs, more so GTIs. But that, atrocious, terrible. I have shared with you multiple times, and there's no nice way to put this. This is not something you can fix. That UX system, it needs to be ripped out, thrown in the trash, and whoever invented it needs to be publicly drawn and quartered. Hopefully I've not been unclear. Now, yes, they made some strides in the new generation of Tiguan where they put a bit of a controller down here and made the processor faster, but it's still an issue. And if you look on like the forums of these cars, one of the big reliability issues was that infotainment and some software glitches. So it's not just that it's terrible to use. Like, for example, like all of this is like haptic feedback. Granted, I'm starting to get used to this here, but it's still incredibly annoying. But if I don't like to use it and it creates problems, why do we have this? Now, apparently, Volkswagen has been listening because, as we discussed in the Tiguan, they made a change here. However, in this, they did make an important change to the UX, and that's all here. Remember those horrible haptic feedback steering wheel controls? All this stuff here, volume, to deal with the infotainment, all that kind of stuff. That was basically one piece of hard plastic that you had to do the haptic feedback on. it was terrible. You never got to control the thing you were trying to control, especially if I'm trying to drive aggressively. Where is the volume? I didn't know where it is. Now I do, because it's a separate button. Matter of fact, it's identical to what it was before, so they've gone back to the old times to make it work the proper way. So for that, I say vielen Dank. But how about we go the whole way and get rid of this? Maybe get some real gauges, because it is a GTI. And if you think about it, like the GR Corolla, I keep on bringing that car up, and yeah, it really competes directly with the Golf R. But the UX there is made for your grandmother. It's made for redundancy. It's made for people that have vision problems. If you know box standard Corollas, you know that is the truth. So the UX target had to be for the average buyer of the car, not GR Corollas. And as a result, us car freaks get a better UX because it's more simplified. See where I'm going with this? I believe I've made my point abundantly clear. Then we press on to something that makes these things stand out, and that is some of the oddball choices on the inside. This one, the Autobahn, has the leather, which, okay, you want a fancy GTI, I get it. But these to me are all about the tartan. You know I'm a freak about the tartan. Can we continue to make the tartan actual tartan? I just got out of that Golf R, and the Golf R, you had to pay extra to get this ridiculous modern interpretation of the tartan, which really was more of a diamond pattern, not tartan. And it's here I feel we bring together all of my pissing and moaning. Volkswagen has a very bad track record of trying to reinvent the wheel. Remember the Porsche Taycan with the air vents that you had to use a screen to adjust? That is my case in point. This is kind of the same thing. You tried to make this work in an electric car, and then you bring it to a vehicle that's enthusiast levels. This just has to go. Burberry's the same thing. It's tartan. It's a classic pattern. Please don't ever change it, and keep it as is. Vielen Dank. And there we strike upon the theme for this entire being of GTI. It's evolution. It's very small updates. It isn't change. That's why it's special, even more so than 3,183 pounds. Today was an unusual learning experience because I sort of sandbagged you. I dragged in here thinking this was a review of an updated GTI, when in reality it was a review, a Living With episode, and a sort of comparison based on money with, I can't believe I'm saying this, a muscle car Toyota. Because when you boil it all down, this is about refinement versus I want something that just pops me in the face, and then you say, thank you, sir, may I have another? That's the Toyota. But really, it comes down to this. 32 grand, I'm getting me a GTI, the most basic one with the basic seats, but that's where we get into the wish list. When you get into 42 grand, that's a bit too much for a GTI. I would do the Toyota, so I'd say back to Volkswagen, how about 34 grand, give me an S with the Burberry seats, I'll even put up with the automatic transmission, as long as I have the adjustable suspension and a sunroof. Can we call that a deal? But I am just one man. It's a point in the episode to turn around to you guys to opine in the comments below, or via our social media, Motoman TV, all one word, Motoman TV, all one word. And with that, a little bit behind the scenes, the week prior to driving this car, we were in the great state of Michigan attending our annual Cars in My Yard party, 10th year in a row. And I didn't bring an AMG this year. Didn't bring a Porsche, didn't bring anything fancy. Instead, I brought the all-wheel drive version of this. Depending on when you see this episode, I'd highly suggest you go check that one out. So I see you in the next episode. Bis später.